But the very first function of money, I would argue, is store and display of wealth. Even in the hunter-gatherer societies that predated civilization, there would have been this sense of duty to the greater collective, which is, I think, what you're alluding to with when you talk about, money is to make everything fair for everyone.
How would you define money, Dominic? What would you're an expert in this space, what characteristics would you give to money? Assuming that I'm right, that it's about meeting people's needs and meeting needs, what defines money?
What is money and how is it helping and indeed damaging our society, our health, our wealth and our happiness? Well, this is the Manna Journey with Phillip Ullmann, and we'll be putting the question of money to our guest today, the financial expert Dominic Frisby. Hello.
The Manna Journey is the catalyst for change in our world. It's a consistent source of truth for the next generation and current leaders. Our mission is to change the world by reframing our current governance, by using ancient wisdom to solve modern problems, and by shaping innovative new businesses to have a culture of pursuit of purpose.
So what you're describing, Philip, with, one guy lending somebody else their cow, you're describing early civilization.
Yeah.
Man has already settled at this point. If we go back to Stone Age man, the first use of money was gold, and when it was used to display wealth, but not only to display wealth, to display prowess. Look at me. I've got access to this shiny substance. Yeah. You should mate with me.
Yeah. I hear.
That's the fundamental reason why people want money.
But that's not an exchange. That's a different thing. That's talking about
a store. A store of wealth and a display of wealth.
Display of wealth. Yeah. Yeah, here.
But store and display, the reason, often the safest place to store your gold, certainly in those days, is on your person.
Yeah, I hear.
But in any case, that gold would also have been used, as I say, as a reward, as a prize, as an expression of gratitude.
Yeah.
These are all functions of money.
Yeah.
But the very first function of money, I would argue, is store and display of wealth. I've added the words and display, but store and display rather than medium of exchange. Okay? But we're talking pre-civilization. Now, let's go into, now the concept of taxation, I argue, existed even in the hunter-gatherer societies that predated civilization. There would have been this sense of duty to the greater collective, which is, I think, what you're alluding to with when you talk about, money is to make everything fair for everyone. But as soon as you get into civilization, one of the reasons human beings civilized on the fertile plains of the Tigris and the Euphrates was mud. Because the tides all went out, they came down, they found this mud, they were able to make bricks out of it, and those bricks built houses. The mud was incredibly fertile, they planted stuff, it grew very quickly, and that's what encouraged civilizations to settle. And as soon as civilizations start settling, they need a way of exchanging. Now, metal would have been one means, but there was no coinage. That was not for hundreds of years. So they used little strands of silver. And what human beings did is they found a way of recording debts using this mud.
Yes.
And they would shape the mud into a cone, I think, would be a sheep, and a circle would be a bit of barley and whatever. And then they would bake these little tokens inside mud balls. And then when the debt was settled, they broke open the mud balls. Okay. So what we're talking here is not commodity money.
No.
We're talking about a very early system of debt.
100%.
Credit.
Beautiful.
And when I described money, now credit, promises, has been used as a medium of exchange and indeed a store of value. The bond market is a credit market since forever. Now, gradually as human beings developed, we realized that we didn't need to bake these tokens inside these clay balls. You could just inscribe the clay balls with pictures and so did the first systems of handwriting develop. So the first systems of handwriting were records of debts owed,
100%.
Usually taxation. And so hopefully what I've just described goes some way to answering your question.
It does. And beautiful. I mean, I wasn't aware of. Like, to me, it's educational. Thank you very much for that. And it ties into the key point, which will lead us into the problems with money, is once you see the purpose is to care for each other and to care for the planet on which we live, you then ask yourself, okay,
I would argue that should be the purpose.
Oh, I agree with you.
But human nature, greed and all the rest of it, and desire for status and power has corrupted that and has always corrupted it.
Could not agree with you more. And that's what we have to deal with. That's idolatry. That's when the medium becomes the end and you worship it. And people want lots and lots of money. Why? Because
Status.
And it doesn't matter when it's at the cost of others or at the cost of the beautiful planet on which we live.
But Philip, if Dominic says that your aim or your objective for money isn't working, then my question to you is, why isn't money working?
Okay, and that allows me to build on what Dominic said. There's two different forms of money. Or there's only one really form of money, which is gold. We'll come back to that, which is, I'm going to ask Dominic a question in a minute, but it's gold and this credit. Do we agree those are the two different forms? So, and people need to understand that they're different things. Let me ask this question. What do you think?
Money, JP Morgan had the great quote on this. Gold is money, everything else is credit.
Yes, I buy that. Now, how would you define money, Dominic? What would you're an expert in this space. What characteristics would you give to money? Assuming that I'm right, that it's about meeting people's needs and meeting needs, what defines money? How would you define it?
I go back to that very first rhyme. Money is a matter of functions for, a medium, a measure, a standard, a store.
Okay, let me put a hypothesis
that's as good a definition.
Let me put a hypothesis forward.
Okay.
Building on that, I think...
Or stored energy.
Okay, I'm not arguing with any of that. In terms of precisely defining what it is, I think there's two things as far as I can see. One, it's got to be non-counterparty. It's got to be mine, i.e.
Nobody else's liability.
No, and that's attribute number one. What does that mean is, in technical terms, we call about a no counterparty risk, which we need to explain. Simply means that it's simply, I've got the gold in my hands, there's no one else involved in that. Have we got anything that meets that characteristic in the world of money today?
Yes.
What is that?
Gold.
Yeah. Gold, but we're not actually using gold for trading.
Well, we are.
Well, in the world of the money that most people are not carrying bags of gold around with them.
No, but central banks still hold gold.
Yes.
And central banks are net buyers. They're buying at the fastest rate since the 1960s.
I agree with that.
Especially in Asia, especially the nations along the Silk Road.
But in terms of the money that we use for transaction, for the
Russia. This was reported in the Telegraph 2 or 3 months ago, just ignored by the mainstream media. But some hackers found that Russia had been sending gold to Iran to buy drones, which it used in the Ukraine war. So it is being used. But gold as a medium of exchange, I would argue it does get used as a medium of exchange for high value transactions. But the logistics of shipping gold, whether it's by boat or by plane, are so risky and cumbersome that it's easier, you can just send a promise over the phone or by text message. So that's why we tend to use credit. But I agree, gold is the money of last resort. It's the only money.
Yeah.
I would argue that Bitcoin is also, but it's a digital replication of that is nobody else's liability. They're commodity money.
Let's leave Bitcoin for the moment.
Sure.
Let's concentrate on money. So the question is
you're talking the difference between commodity money and credit.
I want to debunk the myths. Let me just explain to debunk the myths. When I have money in the bank, what is my perception? Do I think and still think like the old piggy bank or do I think it's money? What does the average person in the street think about his money in the bank account?
Don't you think that what happens is I put my £10 into the bank and it is loaned out as a mortgage. The only money that can be loaned out in mortgages is money that somebody deposits into the bank.
Do I think it's safe though? Do I think it's safe? What we're saying is there's no other party that can meddle with it. Do I think that my money in the bank is safe? do I think it's like gold? What's the average person's perception?
The average person's perception is that their money is sitting there in a little cubby hole with their name on it.
Absolutely.
In reality, all you are doing when you put money in the bank is lending it to the bank. And the various laws and regulations in place make it feel like it's your money and you have access to it, but you don't. And how often, even now, like if you want to send money to certain things and the bank goes, no, you can only send £10,000 a day. Or, no, you can't do that because we're not happy with the money laundering.
Or it takes 3 days to clear. Or
all
this,
of that.
Or this world.
So you do not, but the money illusion is the piggy bank.
Agree.
But the reality is...
So myth number one is my money is in a safety deposit box in the bank and it's safe. Let me ask you, is it safe?
No.
What could happen, Dominic? What could happen to my money?
Well, the first reason it's not safe is that your money is fiat money and it's having its purchasing power rapidly eroded, as we've already discussed, 30%.
That leads to a certain function.
But the second reason it's not safe is the whole system is built around the money illusion. It's built around belief.
Yes.
And it's the fact that everyone believes in the system and it's in everyone's interest to keep the system going. Well, not everyone's, but most people's interests. But it is so vulnerable and people don't realise how vulnerable it is.
Can I just boil it down? I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. So my hypothesis is money is there to meet the needs of people and planet. And you're not arguing with that. Fundamentally, it's about the caring fathers. Then the question is, there's two different things we both agree. One is money, one is credit. No one's arguing. And I think what we're both agreeing is we think money exists in our bank account, but it isn't gold in a sense because for two reasons.
Not even cash.
It's not even cash. There's two reasons. One, counterparty, i.e. there's a bank involved. And as you correctly said, Dominic, I'm lending my money to the bank, which means it's not mine. It's not gold, but you think you're under this illusion, this myth, but it's not. The second thing, which is very critical.
Contracts.
Yes, absolutely. The second thing, which is equally important, is unlike gold, gold never changes value. The price of, let's say, for example, food. In gold, because gold, as you and I know, is limited, it's fixed in the world. There's a certain amount of gold. It varies, you find it, but fundamentally the quantity is fixed. It doesn't reduce in value over history because gold is limited in supply. And therefore, the price of anything in gold doesn't change. But as you correctly said...
It does, but minimal. It's constant.
It's very, very small compared to the fiat currencies, which, as you say, more and more and more gets produced, which means that the value of that unit currency, which is the gold, is always reducing, which means you're getting poorer and poorer because the money in your bank account is constantly...
But the vast majority of people are heavily reliant on fiat currency. And I just want to ask, first to you, Dominic, and then I can ask Philip as well, why is it going wrong for people? Why is that level of wealth declining?
Because, as Philip described, the limited supply of gold, there is no supply caps on the amount of fiat money.
In that case, how is fiat money created?
Debt.
Okay.
By who?
Anyone who borrows money. It's borrowed into existence.
And so effectively, is it the central banks that create it or the commercial banks that create it?
Both.
So if
majority is created by where?
Just to make this really clear for everybody, if I go and get a £15,000 car loan, where does that money come from?
It is borrowed into existence. So there is no limit to how much fiat currency can be created. Unlike gold, which an interesting fact about gold and why advocates of natural law advocate that gold is natural money, new gold supply, new mine supply grows at exactly the same rate as population growth.
Oh, what?
Wow,
so there's as much gold per capita now as there was 100 or 200 years ago.
Thank you for that. I never realised that. It's fascinating.
And I'll give you another little fact about gold, which I think is amazing. One of the reasons gold is such an effective store of value is that you cannot destroy it. Gold is permanent. Now, scientists argue about how gold was originally created, and there's different theories. One theory is divine creation. The gold and silver are gods, Genesis. Another theory is that they are created in outer space when supernovae stars collide, and in the resulting nuclear explosions, heavy metals, gold, platinum are created, and then in the explosions they get dispersed into space, and then with a process called accretion, gravitational pressure, the dust gets pushed together, and that's how planets get formed, and that's how our solar system was formed. Now, if you cannot destroy gold, and gold is in the dust which form the Earth's crust, that means that this little bit of gold I've got around my neck, or this little bit of gold you've got on your finger, is not just older than the Earth itself, it is older than the solar system. And I think that's quite a profound thought. And so when you touch that little bit of gold, that is in many ways the closest you will ever come to touching eternity.
Let me just support that argument based on the Bible. In the second chapter of Genesis, God, in the creation process, right at the beginning, after creating the first river, says gold is good, and gold is actually from the gold of the world. So I buy that completely. Gold is good, and gold is fundamentally part of the creation story.
It is. I'll tell you something funny story about that line. The gold is good, and there was the four rivers, wasn't there?
Yeah, the four rivers. Yeah,
and it was saying the gold in one of the rivers is good.
It says the gold in the world is good, actually, but it's linked to the first river, which is actually the Nile.
Okay, but because I read another interpretation of that line, which is that he was actually talking about the alluvial gold in that river is really good. In other words, it's a rather more basic interpretation.
I think it's more profound than that. Gold is actually. So let me just answer the question that you asked, Andre. There are three economic theories as to how banks operate. And by the way, banks are not. It's not properly discussed in the economic textbook. They don't want us to understand how banks work, because they know once we understand it, we will question the whole system. That we have to debunk the myth.
In my opinion, money should be a subject in itself, taught at school. At the moment, it's like a minor subsection of economics, which not everyone studies.
And it's fundamentally propaganda.
Yes, it is propaganda.